Well, Ed Needham is with us, and he is an Occupy Wall Streeter, and he is in New York, and he's on board with us. Ed, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. Very well, thank you.
So tell me what the goal is. I understand you want to shut everything down, but why? What are you trying to accomplish?
Well, what's happening today is that we're celebrating, a very significant day in terms of our history in the labor movement and what it has done and brought this country. And contrast it with how the situation is now and how economic disparity is, crippling this country. How cracking down on our rights of free assembly, of free speech, of privacy are being, trampled on, which I'm sure you can commiserate with, and a number of different issues that have arisen because we have a very small minority of people in this country and around the world that hold a great deal of money and power, and we have everyone else kind of indebted or indentured to those people because of the way our economy is set up and because of the corruption that we've had in our political system.
So you're not one of the 1%, and you reject the 1%ers?
Well, no, I wouldn't say we reject the 1%ers. I mean, we have 1%ers who are working with us and have been very helpful. We're rejecting, unchecked greed. We're rejecting predatory lending by Wall Street. We're rejecting, unfair attacks against unions and the right to organize in this country. And we're making a statement that we can't do this anymore, and we're not going anywhere.
Are you employed?
Yes, sir, I am.
And are you making a sufficient amount of money?
Sufficient to cover, to cover most of my needs, but
not as much as you
really.
Not as much as you'd like.
No, sir.
Why aren't you making as much as you'd like?
Because I'm working on projects with Occupy Wall Street, and because I think this is an important moment in history. So I feel a service. This is service to the nation.
So if you weren't working for Occupy Wall Street, you would be making sufficient money to be happy with your lot in life.
I would be right now, but I just spent 3 years almost out of work. So I know.
So you're not employed.
I know it's like.
So you're not employed. You spent your 3 years.
No. I mean, I spent 3 years recently. Finished. I mean, I started work not too long ago.
Okay.
But if the point is, was I hit by this recession in the economy? Yes, absolutely, I was.
Okay, but
I was hit, so were my kids.
But if all things being equal, if you were not involved in Occupy Wall Street, working full time, you'd be making a sufficient amount of money, paid reasonably for your labor, and you'd be happy.
No, I wouldn't be happy.
Why?
Because just because I might have the fortunate opportunity to participate in the economy doesn't mean that most of this country is disenfranchised from the system.
Okay,
and
so you're saying
people,
that
there's a ton of people that are out of work, that need work, that are good working families.
Yeah.
And those people are having their homes foreclosed. Those people are getting their car repossessed. And just because I might.
Okay, so you know people who are not making sufficient money to be happy. You know people who, and can you think of one?
I mean, I can't imagine anyone not knowing people who are struggling to get by right now.
I want you to think of an example in your head, somebody that you know that is being, poorly paid and can't make their bills. Can you think of somebody like that?
Sure.
Okay. Why aren't they making enough money?
They may be out of work.
They may be. No, I want you to think of somebody that you know, so that you can say to yourself, well, I know Joe Blow, he's, struggling to make ends meet.
Right.
So in your mind, that person that you know of that's unable to make ends meet, why? Why can't he make ends meet?
Well, okay, it's a woman, and she can't make ends meet because she's earning a low wage at a restaurant.
Why is she earning a low wage?
Because what she's doing is paid little more than minimum wage.
And
so she has 2 kids, and she's a single mom, and it's hardly enough to pay the rent and
all right. So
provide the bare necessities.
So if Ed Needham had his way, how could she correct her lot in life?
Well, we could raise the minimum wage for one thing.
Yeah, but minimum wage causes job displacement. You don't want to do that because then they don't have.
That's arguable.
Well, no, it's not arguable. The laws of economics are immutable. If you raise the price of labor beyond what it's worth, then employers will find ways to circumvent the problem. In other words, what they'll say is, if I can get a machine to do the job, then I can amortize that cost. I can save money down the road. I never have to worry about paying health care. I can just write that employee right out of the payroll. Or they'll say, you know what, if you're going to compel me by law to pay more for labor than labor is worth, I'll ship the job overseas. Suddenly you have a declining number of jobs available for people with low skills, which brings me to my next point, which is, why doesn't she have any better job skills than to just wait tables?
Well, the point here, I think, is in terms of the minimum wage, is that it has not risen, and the cost of living has gone through the roof. The cost of health care has gone through the roof.
Well, apparently
people can't afford to put down. There comes a time when minimum wage has to end, and the laws that enable people to organize and demand living wages has been out of the workers' favor for more than 30 years now.
Well, wait a minute. You've just completely, Ed, you've just completely ignored the laws of economics that I explained to you about job displacement. You're telling me, in spite of what I told you, that you want to raise the minimum wage anyway. In fact, you're now including in your hopes and dreams that we have living wage. And that would mean that my employer has to pay me what I think I'm worth, rather than what he thinks the job is worth.
No, of course it doesn't mean that.
Well, sure it does.
We both know that, but that does make a better soundbite.
Well, no. If you disagree with Ed, wait, Ed. If you disagree with me on that point, make the counterpoint. Explain to me how I'm wrong. Explain to me what living wage is, how it's defined.
I don't need to define it specifically. Let's understand a living wage is enough money for someone to have a full-time job of 40 hours a week.
So if I have a job,
to have the weekends that labor has fought for, and have the health care from their employer that labor's fought for, to maintain these rights and to be able to make enough to be able to support yourself, pay your rent, buy food for your kids, and clothe them.
All right. So if I have absolutely,
I don't think that's asking too much.
Well, I think
you're trying to describe this as something that is
Ed. Hold it. I think it is. Suppose I have a job and I have no job skills. The only thing I know how to do is sweep the floor. And so for 40 hours a week, I sweep floors. That's all I do, sweep floors. I should be paid enough money to live on for sweeping floors.
Well, if you're that person sweeping those floors, you sure will believe that's the case.
Yeah, I want more.
It's very easy to say that if you're not the man, but if you're that man, yeah, it is. Of course it is.
Okay, of course.
Have kids, and he deserves to be able to feed his kids. And if that's the only thing,
no, he doesn't deserve to.
That he can do.
He does. He does. He doesn't deserve anything more than he is worth. If his job is if he has so few job skills, what he needs to do is learn more job skills to become more valuable, to get more money.
And so what's your point?
My point is, you don't demand that an employer pay more for labor than the labor is worth. It's counterproductive. It drives the job away, causes job displacement, and it also creates a problem for the very people you're trying to help.
What creates job displacement is a recession caused by unchecked capitalism in this country. That's what causes job displacement. Look at all the jobs that have been lost in the last 5 years.
Well, the job displacement, Ed, that you're talking about.
This is an upside-down system that is in the beginning process of correcting itself. And that's what we see today in the streets.
Actually, the recession...
That's what we see today, people demanding around the world.
The recession that you're talking about was not caused by the free market and unchecked capitalism. It was caused by big government.
No, of course it was. Big government.
Yes.
Of course it wasn't caused by big government.
Of course it was.
It was caused by Wall Street speculation and economic crash, and everything went tumbling after it.
Okay, what is it that...
It was caused by predatory lending on mortgages that weren't going to be paid for, and then they packaged up the debt and sold it as assets.
All right, Ed,
We let them get away with it.
Ed,
you know?
Ed, what is predatory...
Ed, when we're going to stand up and say we're just not going to do this anymore.
Ed, what is predatory lending?
Predatory lending?
Yes.
Well, predatory lending is commonly defined as lending that is focused towards groups that are going to be easily sold a bill of goods and taken advantage of, and focusing your efforts there because there's a higher turnaround, an immediate profit for the company.
All right, so here's what happened. Banks used to hold the paper when they loaned money. Before the Federal Reserve, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and all of those organizations got really rolling, banks would say, let me look at the property and make sure that it'll hold its value. Let me make sure you've got a decent credit rating. Let me make sure you got some skin in the game.
Can you explain the mortgage crisis to me? Because we don't need to go through that.
Oh, but clearly we do, because I just listened to your explanation and you don't understand anything about it. I'm just telling you that this is how banks used to operate until Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Community Reinvestment Act, and the Federal Reserve got involved. Now, what happened is...
Banks used to be regulated, and then banks became unregulated.
No, it wasn't a lack of regulation.
And every time
Ed,
we go through this, people scream, free market economy, free market
economy. It wasn't a free market...
This has clearly been a case where Wall Street led people to over-speculate.
Ed, it wasn't the free market. This was the government compelling banks, telling them if they didn't make loans in redlined areas where the property values were declining, if they weren't getting enough home ownership, that they could be sued, and they would be punished for not making those loans. And the banks, Ed, said, we can't do that. We're going to go out of business. And that's when Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac said, well, here's what we'll do. We're going to lower the standards for loaning money, and we'll buy the paper. They created the investment tools that you're complaining about, and then they bought them. They bought them, giving it the seal of approval, saying, don't worry about it. We're going to back them up. It was all government regulated. You take the government out of it, you think banks want to make loans to homeowners that can't make the payment?
I'm sorry, is this where you... Is this a question for me?
Well, I would think so. Do you think?
Because what you're explaining in terms of how something caused, how that went, any of that may be valid, but how that went on to cause the economic crisis that we had as a result of the mortgage crisis, may be valid to you and some of your listeners, but I mean it's completely ridiculous.
Well,
and I think it's totally against everything that we've seen since then.
It's pure logic, and it is the history.
It's not pure logic. Well, it's also denying. It's denying the facts.
No, you're denying the facts. I'm telling you the history. That's exactly what happened. In fact, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac told the banks, those teaser loans where you buy it at the lower interest rate for 5 years and then you get the higher interest rate later on. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who set up the requirements for the loan, told the banks, use the smaller number. We don't care if they qualify for the note 5 years down the road. We want to get these people in a home. Now, come on, that was the government. Artificially lowering the interest rates, that was the Federal Reserve. This was all government problem. Ed, I'm going to put you on...
You know why those things were done? Those things were done because the people that have profited by this period of time have, the influence over government through campaign contributions. Look at the presidential race. We've got 15 people in this country that have given 80% of the campaign contributions. 15 people. So you're telling me that this is a result of the government? Yeah, it is. Let's see what happens when we get some lobbyists out of there. Let's see what happens when we have some campaign finance reform.
As long as
campaign
finance reform is an abysmal failure that actually makes it incumbency protection. What you really wanted...
You're asking the people to govern themselves. You're asking Congress to take care of itself.
No.
It's proven that it totally can't do that.
No. When you limit how much money I can give that I've earned to the candidate of my choice, You're telling insurgent campaigns you'll never have enough money to run against the Democrats and the Republicans. And that's precisely one of the biggest problems that third-party candidates have. Hang on a second, Ed. I got to
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Well, hang on a second, because we got to stop for just a couple of minutes here to pay the rent. 874-9390, 800-529-5572. Ed Needham from Occupy Wall Street on Hot Talk 93.9 The Eagle. It is 26 minutes after the hour, wrapping it up with Ed Needham. He is from New York. He is a member of Occupy Wall Street. He has graciously agreed to appear on the program. Ed, welcome back. Ed,
Thank you very much, Gary.
let me roll back to your friend, the waitress. How much money do you think she should be earning as a waitress?
No, she's not a waitress. She'd be earning a lot more if she was. She works in the kitchen, and I honestly don't know how much exactly it is.
Well, take a guess, take a stab. An educated guess. I mean, we know you couldn't possibly know exactly, but roughly.
I think she probably. You know what? It's hard for me to know. I don't know.
Well,
you know, I'm not in that. I'm not.
Well, you
I'm
said
not in
you
that
knew that she was underpaid and not making enough, and you wanted her to make a living wage. How much should that be?
I think making a living wage in this country is so far out of the grasp of people's hands right now.
I know, but you're obfuscating.
What we need is a step towards that.
You're obfuscating, Ed.
I think you might be, Gary, trying to, promote a perspective here that's just not valid.
Well, it is valid, Ed. You can't simply say it's not valid because you don't think so. You have no idea how much she should make, and that's the problem. You see, central planning never works. It didn't work for the communists in Russia, and it won't work in New York or in Missouri.
There's been times in this country where we've had a very effective economy, where we've had a balance that is so far gone that we used to have in this country in terms of economic disparity. And it has happened when we've had an effective tax rate on the top tax bracket. It's happened.
Why would you want to tax the top tax bracket more? Why would you want more of their money?
Well, just look at history. Every time, their effective rate right now is 17%.
All right,
That's the lowest it's been in 100 years. You know, every time it goes down too far, we suffer either the Great Depression or a recession, and then it adjusts itself. And what we're seeing right now is the beginning of an adjustment time.
Well, no, actually, I think you're wrong. Look, what are you going to do with the rich guy's money? What do you think you're entitled to do with his money?
Well, I don't know if it's coming to me, sir. I mean, but it's not my money, and I'm not. I don't know what I'm going to do. I would do with it.
Well, why would you take it if you don't know what you're going to do with it?
I think it's been too long that the working people and the rest of this country have been, paying the way for the richest people.
Well, the rich people are paying your way. They're the ones who are paying literally hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes and not reaping the benefits of that. But let me ask you something. I want you to think about this. Why don't you open up a restaurant and hire people and pay them a living wage and see how well that works out for you?
Oh, there's plenty of businesses that operate with living wages.
Well, then what?
There's tons of this.
So the free market is working. So the free market's working.
No, those are businesses that have chosen to do so because they feel it's the right thing to do.
Well, and that's good.
You know what? Most companies don't do that. I don't have to tell your listeners.
Not all companies, Ed.
95% of the companies out there aren't going to make that decision. They're going to make the decision that brings them the best bottom line at the end of the day.
And
that's not news. That's not news to anybody.
Ed, if your friend wants to make more money, she needs to develop a job skill that's worth more money. That's how it's always worked. And prior to having unions in this country, Americans were living in a far better state economically than they were in Europe, where they had unions. Ed, I got to run. I appreciate the call. Glad to have you on Hot Talk 93.9 The Eagle.